Hello, my friends. It's a very special show. I'm very happy that you have found it and that you joined us. Today we're welcoming Baruch Cohen. Welcome to the show, Baruch.
So glad to see you, Sal. So happy to be here.
We've been talking about doing this for a long time.
Yes.
And thank God the day has come.
The day is here.
All right, Nina, why don't you come in and join us to kick off the show? I am seeing that Rayan is in the house, Carla, Roger, Ed Berg. Ed, I know, is in from New Jersey. Here, let me open that shot.
Hello, friends. Hello. I'm looking. Okay.
Yes.
Hello, Edward and everybody else. We are thrilled to have you with us, and we are very thrilled to have our guest, legendary trial lawyer Baruch C. Cohen, who's got a really powerful and inspiring story to tell.
Very powerful. So we're going to make a l'chaim in his honor and to elevate the spirits around the world. This one is for you.
Thank you.
This one is for you, my beloved. Open that up. And so first we'll make a bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakol niyeh b'divaro.
Amen. Eloheinu melech haolam shahakol niyeh b'dvaro.
Amen. Amen, dear.
Good boy.
This is covering your face, Nina.
This is
lovely,
this
right?
is beautiful
It's
stuff.
lovely.
This is good.
All right. Lisbeth is in from California. Right, Nina, you're going to be monitoring comments. I'm quite sure that people are going to have comments, are going to have questions. You're going to have conversation with Baruch. Today we're talking about one of the most difficult things that there are to talk about, and the very surprising, inspiring place that such a conversation could go. I know it's going to go that way because Baruch took me there with his book. We're going to be discussing this book, Grieving and Healing Through the Prism of Torah, and then the subtitle, A Bereaved Parent's Spiritual Journey Beyond Pain and Grief. And of course, what we're going to talk about here applies not only to a parent who's lost someone, but I think to anyone who has lost a loved one.
Yes.
All right. So we're going to get right into this conversation. And to do that, I'd like to read a passage from your book to you. I know you've got this book memorized, but it's possible that it will spur something.
I hope it's not news to me.
All right, let's get into it. That is not my quote here. Every neshama, every soul, rises to a much higher level in Gan Eden, the world of souls, following their having been in this physical world than before it. Since the essential revelation of Kedusha, sanctity, on the individual level is exclusively through the physical fulfillment of mitzvahs in this world, of commandments in this world. Therefore, besides the saying of Kaddish, the prayer of mourning, and the learning of Mishnayos, learning Torah, in honor of those that have passed away, it is also a tremendous kindness for these neshamos, these souls, when we additionally keep them in mind as we are actually involved in fulfilling commandments and learning Torah. We should not merely try to remember them, but rather bind ourselves to them in order to actually do the commandment and learn the Torah in partnership with them. They will thereby become clothed, in a sense, with a body and in the realm of action, capable of learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, fulfilling commandments once again, and thereby revealing a much greater level of Kedusha, sanctity. So I'm inviting your comment on that.
Where do I begin?
Wait, is there an issue, Nina?
I just have an issue. I think Baruch should begin by talking a little bit about Hindi. Give some setup to this, no?
Okay.
Sure.
I will never argue with the Rebbitzin. So, why don't we come back to this question, and why don't you explain even why we're here?
17 and a half, no, I'm sorry, it's now the 15th yard site, so 17 years ago, when my daughter Hindi was 15 years old, she was a senior in the Beis Yaakov School for Girls here in Los Angeles, and she developed cancer, a pediatric cancer called Ewing sarcoma. And we went through 2.5 years of trying to save her life. And then tragically, on Rosh Chodesh Adar, on the most joyous Rosh Chodesh new moon of the year, her life, God took back her soul. It thrust us into a very dark hole, a very dark cloud of pain. And I was struggling to get my anchor, to find my way back out of the ravine, out of the valley of pain, out of the valley of tears. I read every book I could, went to camped out in Barnes & Noble, emptied out Amazon, and was reading as much as I could. You know, as a parent, you have a child, you love your child. If you're a normal functioning person like I was, or still am, when you see pictures of tragedies of children, you tend to look the other way, like I did. I couldn't look at pictures of kids with pediatric illnesses. And then once I was in the tragedy, once I was in pediatric oncology trying to save my daughter's life, suddenly I was thrust into a new universe, a new vocabulary. Words like chemotherapy, words like radiation, words like, count for the blood count. Suddenly, while they may have terrified me in the past, now suddenly they became my new lexicon. I was now developing a new vocabulary, a new language. I wanted to remember my daughter's memory, yet at the same time move forward. I observed many people grieving in a very bad way. You could be a good lawyer, you could be a bad lawyer. You could be a good griever, and you could be a bad griever. I was observing people, their families were falling apart, children going off by the wayside, bankruptcies filing, divorces are filing, because people just allowed themselves to just crumble when tragedy struck. Some assumed fetal positions in bed and never got out of bed.
Right.
Many would take to opiates, drug abuse, alcoholism. In fact, during Shiva, I was actually offered drugs by a well-intending consoler. But I felt that I had a certain clarity and a certain strength that I wanted to maintain. I did not want to be a casualty like the others who have allowed, I use the term allowed. I consider allowing oneself to just fall apart. I feel it's a choice on some level, and it's a liberty. And I didn't feel like I had that liberty. I'm a father to other children who are alive. I'm a husband to a wonderful wife, sibling to beautiful brother and sister. I was then a son to my mother, a lawyer to my clients. I had an obligation to my society to stay strong. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to figure it out my way, a la Frank Sinatra, doing it my way. And I wanted to forge a path whereby if someday my family should ever go through a hard time again, they would be able to point to their Abba, their father, and say, you know what, maybe our strength came from Daddy. So to quote the book and bring it back to the quote that you just did, at first I started doing things in memory of my daughter. Our family dedicated an ambulance to Hatzalah. Our family dedicated a Torah scroll in memory of Hindi. And these were very physical, inanimate. I don't want to say a Torah is inanimate, but these were physical things. But at some point, doing things in memory of my daughter sent a message of past tense daughter versus present tense me.
Right.
I had a paradigm shift when I wanted to do things with my daughter. Now you might think I'm nuts. I buried my daughter. She passed away. She's buried in a cemetery. How could I do things with? And I had an epiphany. You know, what I like about you, Sal, is you're a body of skin and bones, and you got some organs inside you. But what do I like about you? It's your soul that I like about you. You've got this great personality. It's your neshama that I like. That neshama is alive and well. That soul existed before it was put into the child's body, and it exists after the child died. So a component of my daughter still lives. Once I had clarity on that very issue, I decided to partially live in the past, continue doing things in memory of, but a part of me was going to stay focused, stay on the present, and do things with my daughter's soul. So that when I celebrate good things in my life, I get to celebrate with my daughter's soul. When we had a bar mitzvah, I celebrated with her. A wedding of our daughter, I celebrated with her.
Because it's not given to us to know where those souls are. We can't communicate with the world of souls.
Correct.
But we know they're there. I mean, this is a matter of the deepest faith for us.
Let me give you an analogy. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, many years ago was sent away from his family in White Russia to go learn in a yeshiva miles and miles and miles away. And he never saw his parents again. His parents knew that he was alive and well, but in a different city. They knew that he was being cared for. They knew that he was okay. They didn't have the physical connection with him every single day, but they knew he was in a different room. And with that clarity of sight, I function. My daughter, while not physically in the room that I occupy, she's in a different room. And that has given me tremendous nechama, tremendous consolation, where it's not all is lost. To realize that the soul still exists. And once I came to that realization, I partnered with that soul, realizing that if I can be maskir my daughter's neshama when I make a bracha.
Maskir means?
Connect, mention, invoke.
Mm-hmm.
Invoke the name of that soul. There's a messenger who brings that soul and says, hey, look, a new light, a new yahrzeit light was kindled because of you. A new mitzvah was generated because of you. And that merit gets allocated to that soul.
Okay, so this is very important. What we're talking about here, it's really a game changer for a lot of people. It was for you.
Yes.
We talk a lot as a society about we want to honor the memory of someone. We talk about we carry them in our hearts. We talk about we learn something from them and we're going to pay forward that wisdom that we learned from a person, to another person and to another community. These are beautiful, beautiful ideas and actions that people take because of those ideas. And even further, that you had a Torah scroll created and that you had an ambulance dedicated in the honor of Hindi. But now we're talking about taking this one step further, and it's an infinite step further. It's a completely different step further. Now you're talking about being in partnership.
Yes.
With Hindi. She's in another room, you're here. When you talk about your grandfather's parents, okay, they had the ability to write letters back and forth. This is not given to us.
I can write the letter.
You can write the letter. It's not given to us to get the reply as a letter.
Correct.
Okay, we don't get the letter, we don't get the phone call.
I could send the telegram
We can send a telegram, and we do receive communications. They just take different forms. But we're not talking about that. We're not focusing on the communication between us.
Correct.
We're talking about the partnership.
Correct.
And this is what is so special. In the quote that I read, Baruch said that when a soul comes into this world, it comes from that world of souls. And when it returns to that world of souls, it returns to that world, but to a different room in that world than it came from. The difference is that in that world, it gets to a higher place because of the deeds and actions that it did, that the soul did while it was here. And what's fascinating is that you're saying by working together in a partnership, you can continue to help Hindi's place and help her adjust her place in that world by working together with what you do here with her.
Correct, and I'd like to clarify and amplify that incredible summation. Before you were born, Sal, there was a committee meeting up in heaven, and God had a meeting with your soul, your wife's soul, your parents' souls, your children's souls, and said, look, I'm going to cluster your family together. And you all voted and said yes. In my instance, there was also a meeting. This is a medrash. This is an actual medrash rabbah that talks about this.
A medrash.
Homiletic literature.
Okay. The rabbi's writing a story to help us understand.
Yes.
Okay.
And when there's a tragedy in the family, the medrash says that God discloses this upcoming tragedy to the family and says, look, I'm glad that you all want to be together in this family. You're electing to do so, and it's beautiful. But I need, out of full faith and disclosure, I need to tell you that there's going to be a cancer. There's going to be a pediatric illness, and it's going to be 2.5 years, and it's going to be painful. And then there will be the subsequent bereavement, and it's going to be extremely painful. But I want you to know that in the soul of this child that will be tested, I will place the most loftiest of souls in my orchard. Mm. Do you still want to go through it knowing that you will be partnering with this lofty, we'll call it a reincarnation, a great biblical personality is now going to be placed in your family? And the family says yes. Even though we're going to go through hardship, the opportunity to be connected with this soul is not something that we want to pass up. So the concept of partnership is the partnership between the family still continues, and the partnership, the ability to have a joint venture where you could still enlighten and elevate that soul with subsequent good deeds is ever present and ongoing.
So you were at that meeting. God said, I have a tough mission for this platoon.
Yes.
It's a tough mission. It's an important mission. Everyone is going to grow and be elevated by it. Are you sure you're in? And you said, yes, we will stand our posts. So anyone who's suffering, who's grieving and bereaved, think about that. You according to this midrash, we made that choice before we came here. And we said, I know I'm signing up for something terrible, but I will stand my post. That can be a real source of strength in these excruciatingly difficult times.
Imagine after the fact if God should tell the person who's grieving, or maybe Elijah the prophet comes down and says, look, I know you're in pain, but the soul that you had was the reincarnated soul of me, Elijah the prophet, or Moses, or Aaron. And you had the merit to house that soul for that 17 years. And now the soul is in its final resting place. And now it's entering into paradise because of your affiliation. Imagine how healing that can be to the griever, to the person who's bereft and is totally zerbrochen, as they say in Yiddish, broken. Wow, I had a hand in the final journey of this soul. And now that they've achieved a small degree, a great degree of peace, and I had a part of it, that is consoling. That is comforting on some level.
This is incredible, Baruch. How did you get to this place? Because I know you. I know how painful it was, and it was not. Oh yeah, I got an idea. This is going to help me through it, and then everything was okay. How did you get there?
It morphed.
Okay.
This was not an epiphany one day where I woke up and said, voila. Look, I mentioned earlier I was in a black hole of pain. I was in tremendous pain and agony. I really wanted to retreat from society. I would walk into a room full of friends and feel alone, that no one could relate to the pain that I was going through. And when books weren't resonating with me, when I would go to a grief support group and the person would just listen, or I would end up talking and I would seek the direction, I was hungry for more. And with my yeshiva background, I decided to cut out the middleman. I have a relationship with God's Torah. I learn it all the time. I'm now going to read the Torah as a bereaved parent, not as a trial attorney, not as a civil litigator. I'm going to filter the Torah through my lens. After all, I have a personal relationship with my God, and the Torah should resonate to me. So I decided that, when somebody is a victim of a tragedy, they tend to read things in a way where they perceive and color their perceptions with the lens that they now have. I now wanted to start reading the Torah, and things started popping up at me. I'll give you an example. Genesis. Cain kills Abel. And we move on. But wait a minute, that's the first instance of a bereaved parent. Were there instances in the Torah that I can now glean to see how Adam coped with that tragedy? I started noticing every death in the Torah. I started noticing every traumatic event in the Torah. And the Torah does not shy away from expressing...
I'm going to invite you to talk directly to the people.
Thank you.
Okay.
And the Torah does not shy away from expressing pain and sharing pain. So with that new radar, with that new sense of radar, I learned the Torah, a full cycle, and took note of the things that grip me by the gut, realizing that if it was gripping me, it was gripping me for a reason. Hashem was sending me a message through the Torah. And thus started this journey of writing and speaking to bereaved parents to connect with their pain through the Torah, to realize that many of what we seek in terms of solace and consolation can be found in the 5 books of Moses.
And I'll open up this shot again. First of all, I just want to tell you, I've been looking a little bit at the comments while you've been speaking, and people are so moved and saying that this comes at exactly the moment that they needed to hear it. Is that what you want to say, Nina?
You ready to interrupt for a question?
Yeah, please.
Okay, I'm going to come in.
All right. Well, while you're bringing the question, I just want to say something. You looked into the Torah, and you were seeing things you hadn't seen before because
Correct.
You were different.
Correct.
Right. It's like they say the Torah is like this river. It's never the same because you're different every time you come to it.
I transformed.
And you've been transformed. And well, I'll come back. I want to talk about some of the biblical figures that really stood out to you. But Nina, why don't you bring that question? All right.
Just bring the chair right here.
Okay. No, there's room for you there.
Yeah?
Yeah, you're okay. And Baruch, I'll ask you to move a little toward me. There we go. Squeeze a little bit.
Okay,
Nina, come closer there so you see that you're on. There you are.
I wanted to bring up this question so that to make sure that the questioner is still watching when you answer it. R.J. Randall wants to know, I'm talking to the camera, but you're listening.
Okay.
I will be passing soon from a terminal illness. My family and friends are upset. How can I help them? The subject matter causes grief. I thought being open would be the right approach. It is not. What can you say to him?
RJ,
RJ.
my heart goes out to you, and I'm sorry, and I wish you strength in your final journey. There's a great book you might want to read that addresses this very topic. It's called Chasing Daylight. It's the story of a CEO of KMPG Marwick. I can't remember his name. I think his name is Eugene O'Kelly, who was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor, given 120 days to live. And he decided that he was going to be the CEO of his own death.
Wow.
And he brought closure, and he drew a bullseye of concentric circles. And he identified relationships in his life based on where they were at the epicenter. He and his wife were at the epicenter. Second ring, his children. next ring extended family, third ring his colleagues professionally. And his goal was to bring peace and closure to every relationship in a non-catastrophic way.
Wow.
It's a magnificent book. Without a question, when you read it, you have my permission to email me at 3 a.m. to tell me that you get it. And when you understand why it's called Chasing Daylight, you'll have a nuclear meltdown. It'll be a breakdown of pure tears, a cleansing cry. And may God help you and give everyone strength in this very challenging task that you have. And thank you for your question.
Nina, were you able to change the description so that it includes the link?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, the link.
so we have the link in the
don't you
description
show the
of this
book?
show to Baruch's book, and I'm glad you're talking about a book that was a kindness to you. I can tell you all that Baruch's book is going to be a kindness to everybody who has lost a loved one or is facing loss. Everyone who's facing loss.
So may I
so
comment?
the link is in the description.
By the way, my
Yes.
email is also in the book in case people want to reach out. And the
Okay.
email is,
Put it in
memory
the
serves
comments,
correctly,
I'll
it's
let you
there.
know.
You
What
have
is
the
it?
email there. Baruch Cohn at baruchcohnesq.com.
Yeah, it's in there in the face.
So, Sal, you mentioned the word loss.
Just want to show. This is Hindi, Baruch's daughter. Okay. I did. I said loss.
Am I allowed to clarify or correct the record, as they say in deposition?
I'm saying, are you
parlance?
allowed to challenge me? I would
Yes.
say it's expected.
Okay. Do you know I don't use the word loss?
How could you not use the word loss?
I mean, Hillary Clinton lost. Thank God Hillary Clinton lost the election. One loses a baseball game, a football team loses, one can lose a trial. But, and I hope, the non-Trump supporters.
It's a diverse
It's a
audience.
diverse audience. Okay,
Yes.
so everyone's cutting me slack. But loss connotes failure. And this requires maybe 30 seconds of explanation. Our goal in raising children is to raise them with enough virtue and value so that they lead good lives, so that one day, when they pass away, they go to paradise, they go to Gan Eden. Well, if my daughter Hindi is now in paradise on her final journey, have I not succeeded? Have I not won the race? I've achieved something that perhaps other people haven't achieved. So rather than plague myself with the term lost, I use the word died, but never lost. I'm still Hindi's father. She's still my daughter. Our souls are connected as one. And I keep thinking, I firmly believe in the Messiah. And I believe that there will be a resurrection of the dead in fulfillment of the prophecies of the prophet Ezekiel and Daniel. And I keep thinking about what that will be when that great day comes and I'm reunited with my daughter. And after the euphoria and the hugs and the kisses and after the dust settles, I can see my daughter saying to me, Abba, Father, what's this business about me being lost? Who do you think interceded on our family's behalf before the heavenly throne every single time, there was something that needed done? I was never lost. I was there the whole time. I don't want to have that conversation with my child. So therefore, I don't employ the word lost.
In fact, if anything, we feel lost, right? When the ground has been ripped out from under us, we're the ones who are lost. They know where they are.
Correct. I'm not naive and I'm not in denial. That sounds like somebody in denial. But I've got great clarity about what the Torah says about where the soul is. The soul is happy. The soul is happy to be in God's embrace. We're the ones who grieve excessively because we don't know how wonderful it is for the soul. Could you imagine telling somebody who's grieving, who's broken in pain, and say, your kid's okay. Your parent is okay. It's we who are not okay. But if we can get clarity We can reduce our excessive grief. We can grieve well. We can be good grievers. And once we grieve well and our pain is validated properly, then we can achieve tremendous healing.
Now, is it true, Baruch, that you've been talking about your own pain, but the way that you just spoke to the gentleman who is about to transition himself, it shows me that I think you have an ability to speak to people that you didn't have before. You're a communicator. You're a great trial lawyer. You've always been a communicator. That doesn't mean you knew how to speak to people in the midst of grief or post-grief.
I didn't.
You didn't. So what has changed, and how is that different now?
Something as innocuous as a trip to Disneyland. We were guests of Give the Kids a World, and our daughter Hindi wanted a trip to Orlando. And I was pushing a wheelchair with my daughter for a week in Orlando. Now, in the past, we've been to Disneyland, and all I saw was It's a Small World After All, and the music, and Little Mermaid was popular then, and tra-la-la, life was good. But then go to Disneyland with a wheelchair, and suddenly all you notice are wheelchairs, and all you notice are crutches, and all you notice are the kids with cerebral palsy, and it's a game changer. All you see is pain. I used to be, I guess the word is cocky, and I wouldn't say arrogant, but supremely confident. Up and coming attorney, bought a new home in a nice area, this area. I wouldn't look at ads of kids suffering. But then when I was thrust into the maelstrom of pain, I no longer sought the company of the rich and famous. I developed a radar where I can feel pain in somebody. And when somebody comes into shul, into the synagogue, and I can feel his pain, I will approach him. I won't allow him to be sitting by himself. I'll open conversation. And many times I can feel that pain, and that sensitivity enables me to connect with people in pain. And because when I share the ultimate pain with other people, I try to send the following message. I'm not diminishing your pain. I'm validating your pain. But if I can get through what I got through, then you can get through your bankruptcy, your divorce, your foreclosure, your estrangement.
Can you give, when we see people are in pain and we think, they don't want to be bothered, or I wouldn't know what to say. I think that's what probably people say more than anything. I wouldn't know what to say.
Make the call.
Just make the call.
Are you a friend? Here's the simple formula. Do you care? ? If he's on the periphery and it's somebody who you really never see, yeah, the phone call could be considered intrusive and invasive. But if he's somebody, or she is somebody who is considered a close friend, who you would be insulted if you weren't invited to their bar mitzvah or wedding, make the call. Don't worry. Say something like, look, I heard you're going through a hard time. You want to talk about it. Don't necessarily offer solutions, because sometimes the solutions fall on their face. But be the friend. Listen. Can we go out for coffee? Can we go for a walk? Quick little vignette. I know a colleague, I get lists of lawsuits that are filed in Los Angeles every day. And I see who gets sued. And I see Mr. X gets sued once. I didn't make the call. Perhaps if I made the call, it would be too invasive. But then the next week I see he gets sued again. And then the next day he's sued again. I said, you know what? I'm making the call. I made the call. How are you? After 1 minute of small talk, I said, look, let me tell you why I'm calling. I saw on the public records database that you're being sued 3 times. I want to be your friend. I am your friend. How can I help you? And there was this and crying and sobbing and a breakdown. And he had to regain his composure. It took him maybe a minute of crying uncontrollably. And he said to me, no one called me, no one bothered. And after hearing about what happened at the end, he said to me, Baruch, why so many people are closer to me than you? Why did you make the phone call? And I think God gave me the inspiration. I said, a brother calls a brother. If you care deep enough that you consider the friend a brother, get over your discomfort, don't watch by the sidelines, be a true friend, pick up the phone, and reach out. It's amazing what that overture can do.
I could not have said it any better. You heard what Baruch just said. Make the call.
Make the call.
Just make the call.
Visit the person in the hospital.
Visit the person in the hospital. You remove 1/60th of their sickness. That's what our sages say. It's a real thing. It's a real thing.
Do you care? Question mark.
It's as simple as that, right? Do you care?
It's what
I
makes,
care. And you could even say, I called because I care. You can
Yes.
say those words.
it's what makes great lawyers, what makes great spouses, and it's what makes a great friend and a great consoler.
So Nina, I'll invite you to come in with any other questions. First of all, we'll ask Moshe to sing that song that you prepared. All right, why don't you come in? And then, right, exactly. So Nina's already collecting some questions, but if you have a question for Baruch, Nina's monitoring the comments, and after this song, we will go to those questions and comments. Why don't you come behind us, Moshe, so it's comfortable.
As I sit in heaven and watch you every day, I try to let you know with signs I've never went away. I see you when you're laughing, I watch you while you sleep. I even place my arms around you to calm you as you weep. I see you wishing these days away, begging to have me home. So I try to send you signs so you know you're not alone. Don't feel guilty that you have life that was denied to me. Heaven is truly beautiful, just wait and see. So live your life, laugh again, enjoy yourself, be free. Then I know with every breath you take, you'll be taking one for me. Yeah, so live your life, laugh again, enjoy yourself, be free. Then I know with every breath you take, you'll be taking one for me, taking one for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Moshe.
Wow, that's breathtaking.
Several people commented about how that song is striking them. A woman who lost her husband at Berg, who's battling stage 4 cancer. A lot of people are talking about what this show is meaning to them, Baruch. Nina, do you want to come in and ask those questions?
Yes.
I'm going to attach the lyrics in the comments.
Okay, thank you, Moshe. Moshe's going to attach the lyrics to that song in the comments. Okay. So, Nina, you're going to sit in? Okay. Baruch, I'll move
Thank you,
over a little bit.
Moshe, for that
There you
beautiful song. And thank you so much, Baruch Cohen, for everything you're saying. People are getting so much out of this. So let me, first of all, RJ, who you spoke to before, says Toda Rabah. I think it really meant a lot to RJ. So thank you for that. Pamela Buffington Arick lost her 16-year-old son and lost her, although maybe you don't like me to say the word lost.
It's
So,
okay.
her husband died 10 months ago, and she, first of all, she really liked what you said about different rooms. They're in a different room. She also said, she had a question, I don't know if you can answer this or not. She said, it sounds like my Roman Catholic friends who think that they can pray people out of purgatory. Do you know if that's a similar concept? Do you know anything about that?
I'm not familiar with that concept, but we can, if a soul, God forbid, is in hell, or if a soul is in paradise, the merits that we do for that soul elevate them. Now, I don't know whether one goes from the basement to the attic, or whether one goes from a darker, section of the basement to a lighter section of the basement. But I do know that there's such a concept called raising their status. And that's why when we say the neshama should have an aliyah, the soul should have an upgrade, that's what we mean. When we do something great, we're elevating the soul.
I mean, I'll comment a little bit that just because I've talked about it on the show before, I mean, the Jewish sense of the afterlife, of the world to come, is very different than the culture at large. And it is much more similar to this idea of purgatory, because our sense of hell is not a place of forever. It is a place where the soul gets refined before it can go on its journey. There are some people, whose evil is so great in this world that they essentially get written out of the story. But for the souls that really, need that refining afterwards, they go to this very dark and terrible place, and they're not there forever.
Temporary.
It's a temporary thing, and what Baruch is saying is that we can help that soul. Correct. We can help that soul by partnering with them in doing deeds here in the merit and honor of that person.
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
I want to share a comment by our dear beloved friend Annie McGregor. She says, with my kidney disease, I've had incredible highs and lows. In my darkest days, reading Torah, including Proverbs and Psalms, to comfort my mind and soul, during those times, Torah felt like it was alive. Is this common for others, or am I searching too intensely? I feel it brings such comfort. Do you have an explanation for this?
Annie, first of all, God should give you a complete refuah and a cure for your kidney ailment. Look, there are unfortunately so many people who are so disconnected and they're spiritually dead. But there are those like you who are spiritually alive, where like a pop-up book, the Torah pops up its relevance to you. Consider yourself among the fortunate to be able to read the Torah and have it vibrate into your bones, where it resonates to you, it sings to you. Its message is not lost on you. This is common with people who have deep empathy, who have deep souls. People who are very superficial, who don't really think or are not deep thinkers, never are blessed with what you have. So, credit to you.
I want to ask Baruch about some of the characters in Tanakh, in the Bible, that have spoken to you. So we're going to come to that in one moment. Right now, because we're together, we're a community, I want to invite you all to join me in praying for people in our community and loved ones of people in our community that need a healing. So please, God, please, grant a recovery, speedy and complete, to Yehudit bat Lenore, Frida Levona bat Yedida, David Nissim ben Mazel, Monish Aaron ben Rivala, Aliza bat Tamra, Chana bat Denise, Chana bat Sarah, Babette bat Sarah, Ahavemuna bat Chava Etta, Golda bat Shendel, Chaim ben Rose, Hi Esther bat Sarah, Chuck Wright, Jeff Wayne, Annie McGregor, Yitzhak Pesach ben Miriam, Yosef Yitzhak ben Bracha, Matisyahu Yolbaruch ben Gittel, Donna Smith, Devorah Yael bat Bruna Alta, Louise bat Miriam, Moshe ben Mindy, Tikva bat Kedosha, Charna bat Joan, Harav Adam Moshe ben Leah, Kevin Jordan, Durell, Devorah Shifra bat Yafit Esther, Asher Tzfanya ben Furka Basya.
And because I'm a Kohen, I want to give a Birchas Kohen. Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmarecha, Yo'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka, Yisad Adonai panav elecha v'yasein l'cha shalom.
Amen.
God should make you gesund and healthy for the upcoming year.
In addition to those who are ill and we're praying for them, we ask God to strengthen the caregivers who have the toughest work that there is. Also the men and women of our armed forces who keep us secure, and the first responders who rush to our danger when the rest of us must run away.
Yes.
And let us say Amen.
Oh Lord, I can't wait for that day, can't wait for that morning to come. Oh Lord, I can't wait for that day, can't wait for that morning to come. can't wait for that day, can't wait for that morning to come. Oh Lord, I can't wait for that day, can't wait for the salvation to come, where there'll be no more pain, and there'll be only gain. We'll all be together as one. We'll all be so safe, healthy and in its place, together with Mashiach, and we say Amen. Lord, I can't wait for that day, can't wait for that morning to come.
Wow.
Shekach Moshe.
Beautiful. Torah
Just like-
personalities.
Yeah, I just want to let that moment sit for a second.
Chaim.
All right, so Baruch, let's talk a little bit about the personalities in the Bible that jumped out at you, and you experienced these stories that you read dozens of times, perhaps hundreds of times, in a whole new light.
Our forefather Jacob. The Torah records how he cries and cries. He's a very emotional figure in the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
He cries when he meets the love of his life, Rachel. Interestingly, he doesn't cry when she dies. He's destroyed when he thinks that Joseph was torn apart by wild animals. The Torah talks about his grief extensively. Never noticed it before until I became a bereaved parent. Now suddenly every word jumped out at me like a headline. Moses' brother Aaron. On the day that the Holy Temple was dedicated in the Sinai desert, was the greatest day, happier than the day of creation. Two of his sons, Nadav and Avihu, were killed by a heavenly fire in front of everybody. The Torah said that Aaron was silent. There's thousands of commentaries that I probed to understand Aaron's silence at the death of his children in front of the entire Jewish community. And I started thinking, what did that silence entail? How did Aaron's wife react? Typically the Torah talks about in terms of men. Was I able to find things about how his wife coped? To name a few. And I have developed a fascination in those two chapters. The story of Jacob's presumed death of Joseph and how he thought he was to grieve. Aaron's death of Nadav and Avihu. And another surprising incident of Jacob's son Judah. Er and Onan were Judah's sons who died. And the Torah really doesn't spill a lot of ink about how Judah reacted, but there's veiled hints. So the Jacob story, the Judah story, the Aaron story were figures that really, really grabbed me. And then when I realized that Jacob was also a bereaved parent, besides Joseph, because when the Torah says that he refused to be consoled and that his sons tried to console him, Rashi, the commentary Rashi, says that there were also daughters and they died.
Right.
So for the 12 sons that they had, there were parallel twin daughters and they died. So he was a tragic figure. I know that Jacob's son Benjamin.
Before we go there, you alluded to something just a moment ago, and you talked about the difference between a husband and a wife in their grief.
Yes.
Men and women do grieve differently, don't they?
Mars and Venus.
Mars and Venus.
Mars and Venus. In fact, sometimes couples complain, well, how come they're not grieving the way I'm grieving? Well, it's because that question presumes that we're supposed to grieve on the same way. That child was part of that mother's body. There's a stronger forged connection between the souls. And men can grieve differently than women. They do grieve differently. And in fact, Sal, the turning point in my grief, if you could just imagine a river flow, there's usually a point in the river where the flow changes from this way to that way. Usually an obstruction.
Mm-hmm.
Those markers are significant. In one's life, if one can think about what was the point that changed the flow of my river. I was going in this direction, but then I changed. That marker is significant. And I mark my markers. I celebrate them. I'm aware of them in case it took me into a negative area, which is what I call triggers. The marker that changed the flow of my grief was when I was able to get out of my own grief and focus on the grief of my family. How is my wife coping? How is my children coping? How are my children coping? When I was able to focus on them, it was a game changer. It totally changed. It didn't minimize my grief, and it didn't lessen my grief, and it didn't merely distract me from my grief. But my focus was as a provider and a pillar of strength to my family is, how are they doing?
Were you surprised when you turned your attention on them? Like you thought you knew how they were grieving, but you didn't until you paid attention?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, if it's all about you, then it's all about me, and that's all I could think of. And when you're in pain, all you can think about is how you hurt. To be able to expand one's portfolio and really, really realize and really think and spend time thinking, how is the love of my life thinking?
Mm-hmm.
How are they hurting? It really does elevate the relationship, and it changes things tremendously. And it does enable you to heal. It validates pain, and it enables you to heal better.
Would you advise people that when they're making those calls, hey, I care, I call because I care, is there any difference whether you're calling a member of the same gender as you or a member of the opposite?
It depends on your relationship.
Okay.
If she would feel uncomfortable by a phone call from a man, then perhaps ask your wife to make the phone call.
Okay.
Be sensitive, factor in their sensitivities. Just because they're hurting doesn't mean that their sensitivities evaporate.
Okay.
If they're a Hasidic Jewish family, a man calling the woman would be considered unheard of. So the more appropriate, more diplomatic channel would be to go through the channels that they feel comfortable.
But still let them know that you're sending.
Let them know, or you could send them a note from both you and your wife.
Right.
It doesn't have to be from just you, or you make the phone call, make it with your wife.
Or maybe even it's all going to be your wife, but just make sure it happens.
Make sure it happens.
Right.
Don't let your friend go through the tragedy alone, thinking that there's no one on the planet that cares about them or that isn't interested in them. It's so important to let somebody know who's going through pain and trauma. Imo anochi bitsara. I am with you.
I am with you. I guess then I want to come to the final question of this conversation, and in some ways it's about uplift, and in some ways it's the most difficult, right? You've come out the other side. You're able to comfort others. You're able to be of service to other people in a way that you weren't before. You've developed this radar for pain that you didn't have before. And so I know I've heard some stories already. Since Baruch's book has come out, there have been several articles about him and about the book, in Ami Magazine, for example. And then people writing in that they needed to hear what you had written for them. It changed the nature of their grief and their experience. And that's so important. And Yasher Koach, may you be strengthened to keep doing this work. My question is, but every year your daughter's yahrzeit comes up, right? So in Judaism, it's very important, not only the day that a person is born, their birthday, but for us even more important, the day they leave this world, their body leaves this world. And we honor them at their yahrzeit, and we do things in partnership with them. Your daughter died on the 1st of Adar, the month of happiness. So just as you enter the yard site, you see other people in celebration. How do you deal with that? What does it mean to you? And what does it mean to anyone who's dealing with grief who sees other people celebrating?
It's hard. It's not easy. I don't view darkness as light. I don't view light as darkness. I don't say that a tragedy is really the happiest day of my life. I call a spade a spade. It is a dark day. And I observe it properly according to Jewish law. There is no music that day. There is no celebration that day. But I view the yard site a little differently. In the book, The Gesher HaChaim, The Bridge of Life, written by Rav Michal Tukachinsky, he explains that there are 5 births to a soul. The first birth is when God plucks the soul out of the orchard of souls and says, I'm going to put this soul into the body called Hindi Cohen. Then there's the second birth, when the father and the mother are intimate and they create that seed, that child.
For the physical vessel.
For the physical. So the second soul, the birth, is when the physical child is created. There's a third birth, and that's 9 months later after gestation, when the child comes out, and everyone says Mazel Tov. Everyone says that that's the beginning, but it's really the third. There's a fourth birth, when the soul is no longer bound by its physical confines, and it has fulfilled its mission in life, and it's able to return its soul to its maker with purity, at peace. I view the yard site as the fourth birth. In the introduction to the Gesher HaChaim, he speaks about 2 twin fetuses in a mother's womb. One fetus believes that there will be a life after birth, and the other fetus is an agnostic, heretic, doesn't believe. And they argue in the womb. And the believer, the believing fetus says, when we get out of this womb, I'm going to do things with my hands, and I'm going to create, and I'm going to run with my legs, and I'm going to see things with my eyes and hear beautiful music with my ears. And the other sibling goes,
no evidence.
No evidence of it. This is dark and dreary. I'm surrounded by amniotic fluid. This is disgusting. And then the birth canal starts erupting, and there's heaving, and it's heated up, and there's trauma, and the 2 children are crying. And the believing child goes first. And the non-believing child says, brother, where are you? Whoa, all is lost. There is no world to come. This is the end. He doesn't realize it's the beginning. He hears the smack, he hears the Mazel Tov in the delivery room, and he thinks it's a tragedy. But in reality, he has a very finite perception. What he thinks is the end is really the beginning. I try to keep that in mind. The end is not the end. The neshama still continues. It's the beginning of the fourth birth, where the soul can reach peace with God.
Amen. And is the 5th birth the resurrection?
I don't think he addressed it, but maybe so.
I would think.
Maybe so.
My holy brothers and sisters, may we all merit to enjoy this world, every day of it. May we partner with the souls of those who have gone on before us to continue to do the work that they did while they were here, and that they encourage us and bless us to do while we're here. And may we all look forward, not too soon for us with work to do, but all of us in the right time to be reunited with those who have gone before us. And we can all dance a hora and sing. We didn't know what it would be like, but thank God we made it together. Let's say amen.
Amen.
Amen. The end is the beginning, says Carmen de Jesus. And Pamela Buffington says, thank you for this. As always, blessings upon your head and in your heart. Annie McGregor says, thank you for this tonight. I have been so blessed. Shall we go out with a song, Moshe? And Nina, if there's something I should know about, come on in. But otherwise, we're going to go out with a song. Okay. She says okay.
I think I have to lay down the foundation, the inspiration for this song today. What year was it?
1983.
The rooftop
Diaspora.
Diaspora Yeshiva in the old city of Jerusalem, overlooking right by the Kotel, the Western Wall. And Rav Shlomo Kalbach is playing with the Diaspora Yeshiva band. And this is a song for Rav Shlomo Kalbach that wasn't a featured song in that evening, because I've seen the video, and it's not on the video. It was the Kumsitz, and in between each song, this is the song that they would go to. Just imagine Rav Shlomo Kalbach and the Diaspora Yeshiva band, so full of love and happiness, singing the song, and Baruch was able to be there and remember it till this day and remind me of it earlier. Or tell me about it, not remind me, I didn't know. And the words are, the merciful one who will merit us and when bring us life in the days of the Messiah, and for the building of the new holy temple in coming speedily soon in our days, and the building of the holy temple and the life of the world to come. Just like two fetuses in the mother's womb, waiting to come out, one believes and one doesn't. It is so dark for one, it is so light for the other, but soon they'll both know there is so much more beyond that door. Yeah, 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 yeah. Let's all open our hearts and believe there's a new start. After this war there is much more to come, and all those that we lost, they are never gone, because they're not lost, they've won. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, my holy brothers and sisters. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you,
Baruch.
sir. Thank you, Moshe. Beautiful stuff.
Take care, holy brothers and sisters.